Good afternoon to everybody. Today, Civil Engineering Department of SCBIT is organizing webinar 2 on reinforced concrete design practical aspects by an eminent engineer, Mr. Surya Prakash, Managing Director, Satyavani Projects and Consultants Private Limited, Hyderabad. So, I welcome you, sir, Surya Prakash, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor. My pleasure.
Yes, sir. I also welcome all the participants, structural engineers of various organizations, consultants, academicians, and students from various institutes. So I welcome all the participants to this webinar, and also I welcome our own faculty members and our students to this webinar. Now, I'll hand over to Mr. Deepak Patil. Sir, please continue.
Yes, sir. Sir, Surya Prakash, sir. Since some participants are new, so I will once again quickly give your introduction, sir.
Yes. Yeah, be brief.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Warm good morning, good evening to one and all present over here. Myself, Professor Deepak Patil, working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at SGBIT Belagavi. I'm also moderator for today's webinar. It gives me an honor to introduce today's speaker, Engineer Surya Prakash, Managing Director, Satyavani Projects and Consultants Private Limited, Hyderabad. Engineer P. Surya Prakash is an eminent engineer, consultant and mentor who has made significant contribution to civil engineering. Engineer Surya Prakash obtained his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from JNT UK in 1986. He did his MS in structures 1990 from IIT Madras. After working for 5 years as a design engineer in 1994, he established Satyavani Projects and Consultants Private Limited. He is also founder and mentor of Smart Infra EST, a trust dedicated to civil engineering to enhance employability and employment. He authored a book on design and implementation of communication towers also. Surya Prakash was the guest training faculty for RECTI ESCI CTI Hyderabad on CAD of transmission line towers. He is chief resource person for LEAP lectures, 56 topics for Smart Infra EST. He was a member of expert committee for characterization of seismic damage structures. Engineer Surya Prakash participated in several international conferences such as Italy 2011, ACWC, Seoul, South Korea, then Precast 2014, Moscow, then we have ACWC 2014, Singapore, and ACWC 2019, Istanbul. He also guided projects for MTech and BTech students of engineering colleges like IITM, JNTUH, NITW. He is also involved in training of engineers. Engineer Surya Prakash handled several prestigious projects during the past 3 decades. Some of the projects he undertook include affordable housing, buildings, residential, commercial, office, IT, industrial, hospitals, hotels, infrastructure like roads, bridges, metro rail, runways, hangars, logistics, parks, leisure theme parks, stadiums, transmission line towers, FM, TV, microwave, and cellular towers, providing architecture, engineering, and project management services. The prestigious clients include Ministry of Defense, IL&FS, Tech Mahindra, GVK, GMR, BSNL, Idea, Airtel, Tata, Saket, Manjeera, Janpriya, Ashoka, etc. We are very much fortunate enough to have Engineer P. Surya Prakash sir as a speaker for this webinar. I once again welcome Surya Prakash sir. Now I would like to hand over the session to Surya Prakash sir. Sir, you can proceed with your talk.
Thank you, Deepak ji. Welcome you all participants, and good evening to you all. And thank you for bearing with me due to last interruption last Saturday. And thanks to Deepak and college, SGBTM college, for giving me this opportunity. So we'll start the topic without losing time. So design of RCC structures with practical aspects covered. So this is the topic of today. My overview of the presentation is introduction to the topic and type of structural systems, and the types of structural members will cover reinforcement concrete and analysis of RCC structures, and then design of RCC structures. So this is the flow of my presentation today. And so reinforced concrete, it's a combination of concrete and steel, and it is a marriage between tension and compression. That's what I can say. And as concrete is flexible when it is made, and it gets strong in compression in 28 days. And steel is strong in tension but weak in compression due to buckling characteristics. So This is concrete is the second most used material, and the reinforced cement concrete is the most suited material for construction of building. And Francois Poisson was the one who has first adopted this concept of reinforced concrete. And in 1853, the first reinforced concrete structure was built, the 4-storied house in Paris. And then Ernest L. Ransom was an innovator of reinforced concrete techniques at the end of 19th century. So this is a brief history of concrete. And reinforced cement concrete is deployed in columns, beams, footings, and slabs, as we all know, mostly used. There are several other applications like storage structures in dams, water tanks, tunnels, and bridges, walls, towers. In India itself, we have a 353-meter tall concrete tower. That is for PV tower it is used, and it withstood the earthquake in Gujarat, post-earthquake. And shell roofs we have, folded plates we have, tall structures like chimneys and skyscrapers, Burj Khalifa, which is a standing example of reinforced concrete, fully reinforced concrete used in 828 meters tall building. And any shape, robust, we can make any shape with the concrete because of this side formation and the robustness in the structure because of the rigid joints we have, and lot of redundancy is available in the concrete structures, and there is a flexibility in planning. We can look at the columns, beams, slabs, shapes, any shape of slab we can do, and the rigid joints we have, and the ease in design. That we'll see as we move forward how easy it is. And difficulty, only thing is detailing has to be very carefully done. It's an art actually, detailing, because we have to avoid the reinforcement congestion. We have so many diameters of the bars, and we have to tackle shrinkage in the design and the creep. Particularly creep will be a factor when we design the high-rise building. We have to do the creep correction in construction, and then corrosion for reinforcement. Though reinforcement is embedded in concrete, we can't avoid corrosion if we don't deal with good concrete. So steel reinforcement is essential because of the relative strength, higher relative strength of steel compared to concrete in tension. And as we all know now, concrete also we are able to make up to 180 grade. And the steel is, mild steel is 250, and of course high strength we have up to 500, 550 also. And so this, still that difference is there between steel and concrete, and steel is always superior in tension compared to concrete. And why we prefer steel is because of its bond characteristics with the concrete. It has very good bonding with the concrete irrespective of pH value, because steel is acidic in nature and concrete is alkaline in nature. So they have a good bonding between these two, and moisture and similar factors also will affect this bonding characteristics. And the thermal capability, the coefficient of thermal expansion for both steel and concrete are near, and so they will behave very closely. And durability in the concrete environment of steel is much better, because whenever we have uniform exposure condition, that's why we have reinforcement with a cover specified depending on the exposure condition. So we have to follow the IS 456 provision for exposure condition, and then we can restrict the corrosion, and also the fire rating of the reinforced cement concrete is much better. So we have merits of reinforced concrete as bond between steel and concrete and a stable structure, and we have less buckling risk in concrete structures because of the size of the concrete and then steel embedded in concrete. So we are arresting the buckling characteristics of the steel by embedding in the concrete. And we have aesthetics, like concrete structures can be aesthetically designed, and lesser corrosion. I'll take a small thing. I request not to put the annotation requests because I'll be disturbed. Please write your doubts and put it in the query box, and we'll answer at the end. please don't disturb my flow of talk. Otherwise, I'll be getting on my screen annotation requests. I have to keep declining. It will waste time of others. We have so many participants, and let us respect the others' time also. Thank you. So lesser corrosion in concrete for the steel, if we follow the concrete properties properly, like less porosity and adequate cover and all these factors. Now we have to deal with the vertical loads. Any structure, when we think of designing, the first and foremost is dead weight, the self weight of the structure, and then superimpose dead loads like brick walls or floor finishes, partition walls and all. And then live loads. Live loads are variable during the life of the structure. And then vertical loads, we have the sagging resisted by the beams and slabs, and the lateral loads, that is primarily wind and earthquake. We have sway in the structure, and these lateral loads are resisted by the stiffness of the frame. So this is the basic behavior of the structures, in which we have various elements like slabs, beams, columns, shear wall, and then foundation finally, to transfer the load to the ground. And we have a performance-based design to controlling the deflections within acceptable limit, which we'll share for service criteria of the structure. And we have the partial safety factors in the design to take care of all the uncertainties in the loading, uncertainty in the material properties. Many people tell me, sir, concrete is assumed as homogeneous, but it's not homogeneous really. To factor for that, we have these partial safety factors defined in the IS 456 for considering the loads and applying the factor. So now the important key books that we have to refer to in any by any structural engineer. If you want to be a good structural engineer designing these structures, we must read Purushothaman at least 5 to 10 times. We must read Park and Powley about reinforced cement concrete for lateral loads. And Purushothaman particularly says, if you want to be a good detailer, you must understand how a structure fails. If you can imagine how a structure fails, then provide the reinforcement in the perpendicular to the crack direction, then at least you can prevent the failure. That's what Purushothaman. So all the various structural elements, he discusses the failure modes, whether it is a punching shear or one-way shear or flexural, torsion, shear. We must understand all this, and these are all well defined by Purushothaman. Next, Park and Powley discusses about the behavior against lateral loads. S.N. Manohar is a book on tall chimneys. So to understand about tall structures behavior and their foundation, particularly annular raft, if you want to design, you must refer to S.N. Manohar. And Theory of Plates and Shells by Timoshenko is also a very important book for us to estimate the movements in the plates for various loadings, like edge conditions and all that, discussed very well in Timoshenko. Our IS 456 also takes those coefficients for calculation of movement. And another is SP16 Design Aids, SP34 for detailing, SP23 Explanatory Handbook, and then IS 456 for reinforced cement concrete, IS 875 for calculation of the loads, whether it is dead load, live load, snow loads, and wind load, and IS 1893 for seismic loads, seismic resistant design, and IS 2911 for pile foundations, and IS 3370 for water retaining. We have many other codes, but these are very important when we think of designing reinforced cement concrete structures. And then important formula WL²/8 for span movement, and WL²/2 for cantilever support movement, and the deflection formula 5/384 WL²/4/EI. These are the formulae we must remember even when we are woken up while sleeping. Because my guru told me, if you have two supports for any beam or slab, you calculate the moment with WL²/8. Suppose you don't have access to computer or calculator even, you should be able to calculate the moment. And then if you have only one support, calculate. So any moment maximum for two supports is WL²/8, maximum for single support is WL²/2. And the deflection maximum is 5/384 WL²/4/EI. So we must remember these important formulae. And another way to design reinforced concrete for flexure mainly. For the flexure, the design, it is easier to remember this formula mu by 3d, mu by 3d, that is the area of steel. Otherwise, K value mu by bd square, and you can refer to SP16, approximately the PT will be K by 3. It will vary between 2.5 to 3.5, the K value. So at least if you remember this, if you don't have to refer the book, you don't have internet access, you don't have computer, then you can still design. It will be safe enough. Then for columns, we have to do the PU by FCK BD for axial load and MU by FCK BD square, and then refer to SP16 interaction curves for getting the percentage of steel. Then deflection control. These are very, very important. That's why I'm covering before only. The deflection control for dead load and initial loads, construction load, the span to 250 is the deflection limit. And after finishes, when you add the floor finish and the partition wall, your deflection limit is span by 350. That means you should not increase more than 350. Another important point many people miss is long-term deflection, accounting for creep, shrinkage, and cracked section and inelastic. Limit state means we are going little bit beyond the elastic limit and we are allowing cracking. So that is why we must increase the elastic deflection that we get from the analysis using STAD by 2.5. At least if you don't calculate by all those means, this is a reference for increasing the elastic deflection that we, and that include long-term deflection, you must check with the long span by 2. So this is an important introduction. Nobody should miss this point. That's why I spend enough time. The rest we can even go faster, no problem. So now the structural systems, the basic structural system we all deal with is a masonry wall and a slab. That is the simplest one ground floor building you can construct. And but still you have to design the masonry bearing wall as per IS 2212 and IS 1905. Masonry wall also. Please never construct a brick wall without design. Let us not leave it to masons. That is very important. And recently I had an issue near Hyderabad. Brick wall has collapsed from 3rd floor due to wind of 40 kilometers per hour. So we have very careful design, even the brick masonries. So I can have a separate session for that. Today I'll concentrate on the slabs. So we have slabs. When we design the slabs resting on walls, that's not clamped edge actually. That is a simply supported edge and continuous edge at the most. So we have to design these slabs using the coefficients given in IS 456. We can design these slabs. So this is a simple plan. When we get from a planner, we have to consider this drawing and decide the position of the columns and position of the beams so that it will look aesthetically good, because we cannot have the protruding beams sticking out. Beams sticking out of the wall is not very good to look at. And similarly, corridors, you don't want to look at so many beams running. So we have to think of aesthetics also when we design. So we have to make the framing considering the plan given by client. Framing system that is selected to be suited to the building plan. So that's what I explained now. The selection of structural system is to be finalized with respect to cost, time, buildability, and functionality of the structure. So we have to, I have seen many structural engineers, you will design the structure even without, before considering the construction methodology. That can lead to a lot of changes during construction. So that is why we have to consider the time. Actually, recently I got a call from a client. He's asking me, sir, this is my plan. What will be the cost of construction for the structure and what will be the time taken for that? I said, I can give any time. You tell me in which time you want and what budget you have. So this is what a structural engineer has to think. Considering the client's requirements, we have to decide the time available And based on the time available and the buildability, that means resources available and possibility, access to the site, there are so many factors we have to consider while deciding the structural system, whether it is a precast, whether it is a tunnel form, whether it is a slab and beam system, or whether it is a MI1, rigid monolithic construction. So there are so many systems only for residential building. So we have to consider all these aspects and decide the structural system. So what are those structural systems we have? We have load-bearing system, the first we discussed. You have the brick wall and the slab, and you can go up to ground plus 3 floors with a brick masonry itself. Ground plus 2 is comfortable. So this is a photograph of a slab and brick masonry, very nicely constructed, you can see. So we can do this kind of buildings also. It's not that your column and framing is compulsory. In fact, post Gujarat earthquake, most of the government buildings performed very well because they are constructed using proper brick masonry and framing. They are all engineered, I would say, and they perform 90% of the structures perform very well. So brick masonry is also good against earthquake. In fact, post Latur earthquake, we have constructed many houses with mullion and band construction, with confining the brick wall, and it performs very well. Next is the flat plate floor system. This is mostly adopted in UK because, you know, in UK, the earthquake effect is very less and wind forces are also very less. So there they adopt this system for residential building. There is no edge beam also. And labor costs are very high in UK. So that's why they don't even provide the edge beam. They increase the slab thickness. I have designed the slab thickness of 9 inches for the residential building, but floor height is 9 feet. Because there are no beams, you can construct the walls flexibly. So this is another system, simple system where you don't have earthquake or wind governing. So you can use this kind of system. Next, the advantages are simple construction and it's a flat ceiling and low. You don't have to go for false ceiling and all, and you can embed your light fixtures, also plumbing fixtures in the slab by the convenient position. And you can go up to spans of 15 feet to 30 feet. That means 4.5 meters to 9 meters span. And for live load above 100 psi, you can go for 4.5 to 7.5 meters for higher loads. And next is the flat plate with the spandrel beam, that means edge beam. This will reduce the thickness to some extent because you don't have to check for punching with the 3 sides. Then you will have the beam. When you have the beam, you don't have to worry much about the punching shear, but you have to check for the one-way shear here. So you have the increased gravity and lateral load resistance with the edge beams, and increased torsional resistance and decreased slab edge displacement and decreased slab thickness. These are the advantages. But a little bit of shuttering for edge beam will cause a little delay. Next is our conventional column, beam, and slab system, two-way bending. So here you can see the yield lines also drawn for the same system, diagonal, square panel. So in this also we can optimal. I have done a BTech students project I made them do to identify what is the optimum span for a G+5 structure or G+3 structure. We have come out with 3.6 meter is the optimum span. That means if you draw the curve, you will get the optimum cost of at 3.6 meter span. So that will be very good system if you can go with all 12 feet span or around that 10 feet, 12 feet, 10 feet, 14 feet like that. So that is a better structural system. Next is the flat slab. The flat plate we talked, and now we are talking about flat slab. In flat slab, you have the introducing drop panels. With this drop panels flat slab system, you can go up to 13 meter, 14 meter span also. This normally we use it for office building or commercial building because for office buildings it is advantageous to have larger span. And commercial buildings like mall and multiplex and all, 8 meters is an optimum span. So these are all the different optimum spans I'm giving, considering the overall planning with my experience. So normally if any client comes to me to design an office, I'll go with 11 meter span, flat slab. And flat slab, you can also have the column heads to to reduce the even drop panel thickness. Otherwise, normally for 11 by 13 meter span, you will get a 475 drop in the flat slab, and also slab thickness will be about 200 to 223. And you can also go for post tensioning. Of course, I will not discuss about post tensioning in this session. So flat slab is a reduced slab displacement because of the drop panel. 1/3 of the span you can have a drop panel, and increased slab shear resistance, and relatively flat ceilings and lateral load resistance also improves a lot with this drop panel. And low story height because of the floor thickness less and the services not requiring additional space. Because if you have the beams obstruction, the pipes have to go below the beam. Next is the one-way joist floor system. This is our traditional Indian system, if you all know, Madras terrace or jackarch roofs. Mostly, if you go to and see old building beyond 60 years, 70 years old, you will see a lime concrete with jackarch roof, and or you also see Madras terrace with the wooden rafters, wooden joists. So this is also one of the structural system, but I will not discuss today about this. But nowadays we have this one-way joist system composite. Where there is a technology called speed floor promoted by Jindal, where you will have this light gauge steel fold formed joist, which will be embedded into the concrete, and it will behave as a compression concrete and tension joist. Very efficient, but also it can be used. So we have these one-way joist floors. We can go for a longer span of 9 meters with a slab thickness of 120, 150 also. So that is the advantage in composite floors. And we have this two-way joist floor system, that is grid floor kind of thing, or waffle. We can call anything waffle when the spacing of the joist is very less, and or ribbed floor. You must have also seen in IS 456, it is given ribbed floor. Next is the two-way joist floor system, that is longer spans with heavy loads you can have, and I have designed this grid floor, two-way grid floor in Hyderabad with a 25 meter by 25 meter span, with a 750 depth beam, in which we could even provide ducts for air conditioning in 750 depth beam. So that is the advantage in this two-way. But you have to design for the torsion. When we consider the grid, two beams crossing the rigid joint, you have to design for the torsion. So combined torsion and bending. So these are the waffle slab system. Waffles, because they make a form, you can even use the plastic troughs and put them and pour the concrete. That is the waffle slab. And this is the ribbed floor I was talking about. And solid beams. This is one-way slab and two-way slab, solid beams. And then waffle with beams and ribbed with integral beams, you can see here. And then waffle with integral beams. So these are all the structural systems, simple structural systems we come across in buildings. And they're all necessary. We have to use one of these systems depending on the span, loading, and constructability, availability of the skill and form work. So now we'll go into slowly the actual topic. Sir, I will take your questions towards the end. Please don't put annotation. So rigid frame structural systems. This is a typical building you can see here. Sorry. So here you have the footing, you have the column, beam, slabs, and a grade slab or plinth beam and slab. So this is the typical, and roof slab. This is a typical frame structure. And this is a photograph of a frame before constructing the walls or facade. So here we have these shear wall and flat slab systems. This is also quite possible. Flat slab will act as a diaphragm, transferring the shear to the shear wall, and we can design this kind of structural systems also. But shear wall requirement will be essential when we go for 10 floors and above. And beyond 30 floors, we have to design with a tubed frame. Of course, I'll just show you for creating interest in tall building. So this is a core-supported outrigger system. This is Taipei Tower, you can see. And this is a frame tube systems. which you can see in Chicago, CS towers and brace tube systems. We have this in Chicago again. And this is a brace tube system. So we resist the lateral loads with the outer frame and this bracing. And vertical loads are designed with the inner columns and beams. The same thing happens in cooling towers also. You have seen hyperbolic paraboloid shell. The whole shell is designed to resist the wind loads. And inside you have the frame, column and beams in the cooling tower. They're designed for vertical load. So CS towers, most popular, Fazlur Khan has designed this, our Bangladesh architect who has conceived this concept, and later engineers have developed the concept of these tubes. So bundle tube is another structural system, and this is a landmark tower. This is with the truss system. This is external. You have the cards like a space truss, and you will have the bracings. This is for like a tower resisting the wind loads. And diagrid system mostly talked about in Amravati in Andhra Pradesh, but of course it didn't take off well. And this is a buttressed core system designed by famous Bill Baker, and it's 828 meters tall with a hexagonal core and I-sectional buttressing. Because I is very good in flexural resistance. And we have the Space Truss Bank of China, and we have super frame. Of course, this is not there now. World Trade Center has been destroyed. And we have exoskeleton system. These are all beautiful truss systems if we understand these trusses. So this is a truss in high-rise building. So because truss is used for cantilever system, you can design this like towers, these buildings also. So next, so we have just seen the high-rise buildings because we have to understand the load transfer mechanism, lateral loads and vertical loads separately. Shown some of the examples, interesting examples worldwide in the skyscrapers and super tall buildings. Now let us discuss, come to our own bread and butter, that is multi-storied building, stilt plus 5, cellar, stilt plus 7, that kind of structures. So in which we have these routine elements of beams, columns, slabs, footings, and staircases. So today we'll focus on this. So how the behavior of a beam, what are all the things in a beam? Basically, we design for shear and bending, and of course, sometimes torsion. When we have the torsion, we have to calculate the equivalent bending and the equivalent shear and add it to the, unfortunately, our IS 456 is still not rationalized for design against torsion. So it will be very conservative design if we design for torsion. That is why we have a clause in the code. You can ignore the compatible torsion. That means if the structure won't fail, like we have a cross beam and a main beam, and cross beam which has two supports, without considering the end moment is okay. So you can end release this cross beam in your STAD analysis and take only shear so that you don't have to design for torsion the main beam. So because if you design for torsion the main beam, it will be very uneconomical. Your steel quantity will be very high. So design for mainly moment and shear. And also you have to release there is a master slave node option in SAP, for example. That means you don't allow these beams to take any axial force. You have the same deformation in all the nodes, that means diaphragm action, to account for diaphragm action. When you have a slab which is very rigid in its plane, you cannot have a deformation difference in the beam. That means you are allowing slab to crack. And so it is better to consider no axial force in the beam and most of the cases, and then design for bending and shear. And the deflection check, of course. And we have these types of beams, cantilever, single support, and we have this simply supported beam. We have overhanging beam, and we have these continuous beams, roller and hinge, and fixed beams, both ends fixed, and we have cantilever with the prop. So these are the types of the beams we have. So simply supported beam, mostly it comes on a brick wall. You can see that will be treated as a simply supported beam. Many people ask me, how do you model the bearing? In bridges, if you see, we use the neoprene bearing to allow the lateral movement of the beam. And here, in brick wall, you can also put the polythene sheets for allowing the relative movement of the beam. And this is the fixed end beam. And we have a continuous beam like this. We can design the continuous beams. And as far as simple beams like this resting on the wall, IS 456 has given the moment coefficients for the beams. That means end support, penultimate support, end support, and intermediate support. Like that, we have the moment coefficients for live load and dead load. And you can also redistribute these moments in reinforced concrete. Up to 15% end moment you can release, and add it to the span moment. So it's economy, and also because we are allowing cracking, and realistically in the long term it can happen. So better to redistribute the support moments and design so that you will economize. Otherwise, you know what is the span moment here? It is WL square by 24. If you consider it as a continuous, it is WL square by 10. You will have very heavy reinforcement here. Whenever you have heavy reinforcement due to the congestion and all, performance will be difficult. So release some 456. That's my main idea of showing this code. And now requirements governing the detailing and all we have to take care. Next is the analysis of structures. And okay. Internal forces acting on typical structural numbers. Reinforcement, it will take care of the tension, and beam, primarily it is to transfer the shear and bending. And the column we have discussed, and these are all the axial forces, and this is how axial force, 2 shear forces and 2 bending. In a 3-dimensional component, this is how the forces will be. So this is always, you should use the left hand. So you have the movement about both the axis and axial load, shear in this direction and shear in this direction. So statically determinate structures, and we have the force method, 3 movement equations, slope deflection method. Let's not forget these very important methods apart from your STAD and all. I'm doing one project with students now. They have done this much of volume analyzing the whole structure using movement distribution, slope deflection, mechanics method, Wattle method, and factor method, and cantilever method. All these methods are very important. Please use this at least once for one project and compare with STAD results. Every engineer must do this analysis we talk about. And the aim of designing is to arrive at the steel required and the size of the member that is required. And for estimation of the loads, I explained IS 875 and IS 1893, very important. And then limit state method and working stress method. Load factor method or ultimate load method. So these are all the methods of design, and limit state of collapse, limit state of serviceability, limit state of durability. So these are all the different limit states we have to consider in the design. So I had recently one case argument in the court, recently means about 10 years, about this structure safe or not safe. How do you decide whether a particular structure is safe? So we have to understand this limit state of collapse, limit state of serviceability. Normally we design for limit state of serviceability, and but we can also design for limit state of collapse. That is called robustness analysis we can do. That means identify the most critical element in the structure, and if it fails, that element, it fails, still the structure has to be stable. That is the limit state of collapse. So it deals with the strength and stability of the structure primarily. Whereas serviceability deals with the cracking also. That means performance of plumbing line, performance of sewer lines and all. That is the serviceability. And that water dampness resistance and all. So load combinations, we need to remember there will be 13 load combinations, dead load plus live load. Apart from that, 12 load combinations of earthquake in both directions, wind in both the directions. This is minimum we have to do for analysis of the structure's load combination. Next is the quantities of steel and concrete. Normally, what will be the steel consumption in a normal residential building? It can vary anything between 2.4 to 3.5 residential buildings. So we have to remember that. What will be the steel in beams? Sorry. Steel in beams, steel in slabs, and steel in so steel in slabs is normally 0.65 kg per square feet of the building in area. Steel in beams also is about 0.8. Steel in columns is 1 kg, and steel in footings is 0.3. And other like staircase, lintels, and such. So we have to remember these quantities, and we have to design the structure such that these quantities won't exceed beyond this. And deflection checks we have to do for lateral sway and vertical deflection slab and beams. 20 mm is the maximum deflection with the long-term effect considered. I told you 2.5 is the factor. So approximately 8 mm is the elastic deflection you should control. Always, any analysis you do, if your deflection is more than 8 mm, revise your design, revise the size, or revise the frame. So you have to draw the force diagrams like this, axial force diagrams. You must see for every frame how it is behaving after the analysis. And the movements in the columns. I'm sorry, today only I quickly took some pictures of my software analysis and then I posted today. And this is the shear force diagram in the beams, and this is the bending moment diagram in the beams. Of course, it is curved, but this software shows only end moment and span moment, so it shows linear in between. And so this is the bending. We have to understand this bending moment and shear force, and we must study whether the structure is behaving as we have planned, as we have modeled. So that's very important before going for the design. So the design guidelines, we have the deep beams and shallow beams. Deep beam means primarily shear resisting beam, and shallow beam means it resists both shear and bending. And deep beam is governed by shear, normally B by D ratio, less than 2, and the shallow beam B by D ratio is greater than 2. B by D. Yeah. B by D is given reverse. And the calculation of moment and redistribution of support moment, this I explained. And we have this bending moment and shear force diagrams for the beams. Particularly, you must verify. This I'm showing particularly because I interview so many students when they come for job. First question I'll ask them is to draw a bending moment diagram. And I am disappointed many people can't do it. I'll only ask few questions. What is characteristic compressive strength? And what is the bending moment shape of a particular shape of beam? That's why I'm showing it's very important for us to draw. We should be able to draw we may not draw actual value, but we should know the shape of the bending moment. So this is another bending moment and shear force for proper cantilever with a concentrated load. And this is the UDL bending moment. Point of contraflexure is always we have to calculate the distance of point of contraflexure. This is very important for termination of the top reinforcement. And also termination of the third, we have to provide minimum lap length beyond the point of contraflexure. So we cannot terminate the reinforcement at the zero moment. And this mistake many people do in the footings also. And this is also important for everyone to understand the stress diagram. This is the tension stress contour, and this is the compression stress contour. That is why we provide the shear reinforcement cranked. It used to be earlier. But now IS 456 discourages providing cranked bar, so you provide the vertical stirrups. And in case of brackets or corbel, you provide orbital stirrups. So this is very important to understand the stress contour and the bending and the shear stress pattern in the beams. And this is the stress diagram, limit state. The main difference between limit state and working stress is in working stress, we take the linear variation of the stress and model it with this triangular shape, whereas in limit state we take the parabolic variation of the stress in compression particularly. So this is the multi-story typical building where we have the beams, so many shapes of beams, curved and rectangle beams. And this is from SP34. So this is how a typical beam simply supported. Olden days of the cranking used to be there. But now avoid this cranking because you can't provide cranks along the stress contour. Sitting at one point, it will not resist the shear completely. So better to have the shear stirrups. And top reinforcement in case of end moments. So this is the typical types of beams, continuous beams. Here you have the extra reinforcement and the termination of the extra reinforcement normally as per thing you have to go up to L/4. And the cantilever beams, portico beams and all, tapered beams we'll give to make it look thinner at the end. And flanged beams. This is a T-beam I was talking about, and L-beam. And the design guidelines for columns. In India, optimum percentage of steel in columns is 2% because steel is costlier. And but as per code, it is 4% maximum. And now code allows even in India, but in Singapore they go up to 6% because of the value of the space. So they can go up to 6%, but to use the concreting methods and all, and even IS code now permits going up to 6% if you are not using the standard lap reinforcement. So this is the reinforcement and the design guidelines. As I said, the L and T shape we can provide, and this is how the main important thing many people I come across in sites is people don't provide the stirrups before concreting the below portion. This is very nice. It's very important. Also cross connecting these columns before. Otherwise, people leave like now the corona has come. Lockdown, people leave the reinforcement like this, it will warp and lose its strength actually. So we have to tie it across always. So you can see the bend here. So you have to support these columns with the cross supports or struts. And the column construction and curing. This is a very important thing. I always say, please tie the cube to the column only, so that the cube represents the curing of the column. And similarly, put the cubes on the slab on. So this is the reinforcement in columns, cover to reinforcement. You can see here it is more cover and here it is less cover. So that should be avoided. You must use the cover blocks and marking properly. Here also, always I use bad photos to remind me that this can happen as a designer and design with proper. So here you can see the couplers used without laps. We have done that. And reinforcement detailing for the columns also we have to consider. And then slabs, when it comes, the deflection check L by delta should be less than or equal to 250 for the dead loads and construction loads. And the L by delta should be less than 350 for the finishes, floor finishes and partition. So these are important guidelines, and this is the slab reinforcement before concreting. And these are all the beam and slab. So how you concrete and represent is very important. And the design of slabs should be done as per coefficient given in IS 456. Otherwise, refer to Timoshenko for the coefficients for different types of loading of the slabs: concentrated load, line load, triangular load, uniformly distributed load. All types of loads, we have the coefficients for different edge conditions. So, so these are all the slab reinforcements and beams. Concreting sequence also is very important. We have to think of concreting method also when we are designing, because we have to otherwise give the construction joint and all the core sequence of the slabs. We should ask for the method check. Nowadays we have this welded mesh reinforcement also for the slabs and walls, so we can use that also. And composite slabs, deck sheet also we are using, and the concrete we are pouring. This is mostly occurring nowadays for faster construction, reducing the cost of form work and arriving at the quality and speed. So we should also design the slabs as composite slabs, where we take the composite action of the beam and concrete, beam in tension and concrete in compression, and in the slab, deck sheet in tension and concrete in compression. That is our composite action. So this is the one-way slab, typical reinforcement. But I suggest whenever you are putting the slab on the terrace, provide the temperature reinforcement on the top. Otherwise, insist on insulation of the concrete above, which is costlier than providing 0.12% steel in both the direction in the top terrace slabs. Very important. And this is the bending shape of a slab and detailing. And this is the stress contour. Whenever you design the slabs, you must study the stress contour of the slabs and then provide the reinforcement. And all otherwise, you should be able to draw the yield line for the slab and provide the reinforcement. And the corner reinforcement in case of two-way slabs and for resisting the corner lifting here, the corner reinforcement direction. You have to design these two-way slabs. We are considering the coefficients and the moment you calculate. And the design guidelines for flat plate. Never use direct design method unless you satisfy all the 5 conditions. That is the adjacent spans difference and minimum 3 spans, more than 3 spans in both the directions. And the span difference should not be more than 20%. So this is the column capital with the flat slab. This is one of the photographs we did about 25 years back. And this is a drop panel in flat slabs. This is how it looks. And this is the drop panel. And this is a big column capital come drop panel, you can see. And this is a combination of drop panel and column head. And design guidelines for foundations next. So most occurring mistake is definition of minimum depth of foundation in foundation design. So we have to consider the water table, we have to consider the covering or erosion, soil erosion, and fix the minimum depth of the foundation. And also recently somebody asked me, sir, we are designing some 20-story building. What should be the minimum depth of foundation? So this kind of things, you have to consider the soil strata. You have to give the stability to the structure. Sometimes passive resistance also is important in the behavior of the structure. And this is the one-way shear at the D from the face of the column or two-way shear from D/2 from the face of the column. When we check for two-way shear, please don't forget P/A plus M/Z. We have to design for that maximum stress, and you have to take the trapezoidal stress curve and estimate the perimeter area, and then see that the punching shear value is under control as per 0.25 Pepsi. So this is the stress diagram, and this is the pedestal and column or step footing typically. And these are the photographs of the foundations. This is a pad type footing, and we have this edge reinforcement. This is what I want to stress upon. I have seen recently some foundation without this bend, only straight bar they have put. That is wrong. You must give a bend as per code. You cannot leave the reinforcement at the 0 moment. And we have a cover of 50 mm, so there is a moment definitely. And so you should have L bend compulsorily, minimum lap length, L bend. And design of isolated footings, no shear reinforcement is to be provided. Better to avoid. Never design shear reinforcement in the foundation because we can't see what is happening to the behavior of the concrete below the earth. So better give the concrete. Concrete is good in resisting shear. And design for flexure should be done, and the shear reinforcement shall be provided after one-way shear check, but it's advised to avoid shear reinforcement. So in case of uniaxial bending, normally for biaxial bending, you have to check for one-way shear, or there is no bending primarily axial, also you have to do two-way shear. But if you have a uniaxial bending primarily, then you must do the one-way shear check. So this is the construction before concreting, and this is the step footing and pedestal, and this is the slope footing, very bad. Whenever you do this kind of slope footing, please insist on the top shuttering also, because you can never, this is a contractor's pet, because you will get concrete settled here. You cannot make it straight line always. Please go and check. It will be less, and they'll get lesser quantity of concrete, but we'll be paying as per the drawing straight line. So that's why we should discourage, and performance-wise also it is very difficult. There will be a lot of shrinkage in the concrete because you're increasing the concrete volume. So prefer step footing or pad footing. In case you are going for slope footing, insist on the top shuttering. 19 load combinations, you have to consider the, what you call, varying loads, checkered board pattern as the code. This is a slab beam and mat footings. This is a raft foundation. So you can also design as an inverted flat slab in the raft foundation. And concreting of raft is also, we have to plan very carefully, very important. And minimum reinforcement in the pile foundations now is 0.4% in the piles, and don't have to transfer the moment from the pile to the cap or from the cap to the pile, because cap is primarily a D beam. It can only transfer the shear. So better provide the reinforcement to transfer the shear to the cap, pile, from the cap to the pile. This is the photograph of the thing. Next important thing is the plinth beams. It's also part of the structure, plinth beam or grade beam. Grade beam we provide on the ground level or grade level, and plinth beam we provide at the plinth level. If you have foundation depth very small, then you can go for plinth beam. Foundation depth is more, go for grade beam. And the reptile, normally plinth beam will provide at 1 meter level when you have a reptile problem. We have done many projects like seed storage. If you have a seed storage, you must provide lipping slab for rat protection. So reptile problem, flooding, seepage, and future probable rise in the ground. These factors were considered for fixing the plinth level. So this is a grade beam and this is a plinth beam, you can see. And pedestals we provide when we have the very high bearing capacity. You don't have to go for plinth beam, but still provide a pedestal for reducing the depth of the footing, because footing size is very less when the bearing capacity is very high. So you will have almost 45 degree load transfer. So we have to provide, to reduce the depth of the footing, we have to provide the pedestal. So this is the grade beam, and I have these Excel sheets, but I don't think time permits for explaining in Excel sheet. Whoever wants, I can share these Excel sheets. You can put a request to SDBTM. I'll share with Deepak these Excel sheets for design of this staircase, open well, and combined footing, isolated footing, slab design, beam design, columns, and rectangular columns. So now I'll take the question. Any questions, Deepak? If you have filtered, you can read it.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your insightful knowledge on design of RC structures. Now I request the participants to have a question and answer session. So anyone having the question, you can raise that. Sir, but before that, I got one question through chat box. Let me read that.
Yeah.
It is from Shambhavanath. Sir, the question is, sir, please give information about pile and pile cap foundation design in concrete structure. What are the criteria we have to study in site, and how to decide number of pile and bulb in pile?
Bulb? Oh, that is unremoved pile.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's a good point, a good question actually. Yeah, I could not cover due to time constraint, but I'll explain. It's an important point I have to cover. There are two types of pile foundations. One is unremoved piles, and the other is friction piles or end bearing piles. Unremoved piles are primarily also called as anchor piles, because when we have a foundation in expansive soils, please remember, every black clay is not black cotton or expansive clay. So we have to study the behavior, swelling pressure we have to take, and based on that decide whether it is expansive clay or not. If it is expansive clay, we have to take the pile beyond the clay layer and anchor the bulb in a hard state or a sand state. In fact, that's a beautiful concept given underreamed piles. So underream is a basically end-bearing pile and also working as a audio, please. I'm getting echo. I cannot. So that is the underreamed pile. To friction piles, how to decide the number of piles? In case of unreamed piles, IS 2911 has given the capacity of these piles. It can range from 8 tons depending on the depth to diameter of the pile, depth, and the size of the wall. So based on, and the strata, type of strata, based on that, they have given the capacity of these piles. So total working load divided by the safe capacity of the pile will give you number of piles. So once you get the number of piles, you can have 2 piles like this, or you can have 3 piles in triangular shape, or 4 piles, or 5 piles like pentagon, and 6 piles like a hexagon or rectangular shape. Like that, we can decide the pattern of the piles. Once we decide the pattern of the piles and the cap, we have to design the cap. Primarily, cap we design for punching shear due to the column load or punching shear due to the pile load capacity, pile load. Then once we decide the depth of the cap, and the pile cap is basically a deep beam behavior. That means shear, basically. So, but for the provision of reinforcement, we have to model it as a tie strut model. That means like a truss. So the column, suppose we assume 2 piles are there. So you have a column load transferred like this. So these are the 2 struts, and we have a tie. So triangular shape. So you can resolve these forces, axial load into 2 struts by cos 45 degrees or cos 30 degrees, depending on the depth of the cap. And then that the resolution into the tension at the end. So you have provided the reinforcement in the bottom of the pile cap equivalent to the tension. So this is a tie, and these are the struts. And shear reinforcement horizontal, you have to provide for the strut force calculated. So that is how we design the pile cap. So tension reinforcement, shear reinforcement. That's all. There is no flexion in this. So that is the design of pile cap. Number of piles I answered, and underreamed piles I explained. And next is the piles. How do you decide the pile capacity? Pile capacity we calculate theoretically depending on the friction coefficient. We have the Excel sheet for that also, and friction and end bearing. Both. Normally you have to ignore the friction if you have the water table. We have got some projects where client has asked us to consider complete saturation condition for 40-meter depth of the pile. So we are getting very less friction resistance, and end bearing only we take. And in addition to that, we have to do the pile load test. So when you do the pile load test, if the soil is in dry condition, and if the water table is there as per the design requirement, design brief, then you have to reduce the pile capacity by the factor of reduction in friction due to water saturation condition, and take the pile capacity. So pile capacity either you can take from 2911 in case of unreamed pile, or friction and end bearing in case of this, and counter checked with the pile load test, initial pile load test, and confirmed for every pile routine pile load test, and then you take that pile capacity for the design of number of piles depending on the actual load. I hope I answered. Thank you. Next question.
Okay.
Deepak.
I got some more questions, sir.
Yeah.
Question is from Srivalli. Clear cover mentioned in IS 456 is up to main reinforcement or up to shear or ties?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Suppose when we talk about slabs, there is no shear reinforcement. So it is to the main reinforcement. Only in case of columns and beams, the clear reinforcement, the clear cover is to the main reinforcement. We have to provide 40 mm. And normally the tie reinforcement is 8 mm or so. Suppose we have ties, some cases we had shear stirrups diameter of 12 mm and 16 mm, heavy beams. Then you have to provide clear cover to the shear reinforcement. Up to 8 mm, I feel you need not work. But beams, 25 mm cover, you have to give clear cover for the shear reinforcement only.
Yes, sir. Yes. So the next question is, what is the percentage limit at junction of column and beam? If is maximum of column and maximum of beam, then at one section it will increase the percentage compared to the concrete area.
No, sorry, that's not a correct thing, because column reinforcement percentage is vertical and beam reinforcement percentage is horizontal. And if it is an end support, suppose then you will have a L bend in the beam reinforcement. But that also not considered as a percentage at the junction because you have the two beams or two column and beam joining. So the maximum percentage clause applies to main reinforcement in column, and that maximum percentage is given considering all these factors. So you don't have to worry. But as I mentioned in the design, column reinforcement better to restrict it to 2%, that is better performance. And also beam reinforcement will never go for 2%, better to restrict it to 1%. Maximum limits you never go as a structural engineer because it is very difficult to control the quality of concrete at such junction. Though code permits. But we have to take a lot of precautions to ensure the concrete quality without honeycombs in such junction. That is why avoid. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Vedma Priya. The question is, whenever we perform check for development length in two-way slabs, then we check it along both shorter and longer span. If along any span the condition is not satisfied, then what we have to do further?
Development length, long and short span. Oh yeah, that means is it development length or curtailment length?
Development length. Development length.
Development length. Suppose we have a reinforcement, whatever section we are considering, at that section, whatever is the stress in the bar, for that stress, we have to calculate the development length and provide the development length. And suppose, you have the reinforcement from the other side, you calculate the development length, but you have to maintain the maximum of these two. Yeah, I think now I got your point. So you have to consider the maximum of these two and provide the development. Short and long, maximum here.
Yes, sir. Sir, the next one is from Srivali only. The question is, how can minimum lap can be provided for sloped footing? I think the depth at the edge cannot be sufficient for minimum lap.
Then you have to increase the edge depth. Minimum edge depth is 150 mm. There are limitations on the slope of the slope of footing also. There is the IS 436 clause. If your slope of concrete increases 30%, 30 degrees, then you have to calculate additional stresses due to that in the concrete beam or footing or any concrete element. And your edge depth, suppose if it is not adequate to provide the development length for the end bar, then you have to increase the edge depth of the foundation. Definitely. Good question.
Okay, sir. So the next one is from Vinay. What is the permissible maximum unsupported span length for beam design in conventional concrete?
RCC, normally we limit it to 12 meters, reinforced concrete. Beyond 12 meters, we go for pre-stressed or post-tension beams. We can design up to 18 meters also, but it is not economical, unsupported length. Then beyond 18 meters, rectangular beam is not economical. We go for I-beam, I-shaped beam. And beyond 30 meters, we go for box section. So this is the pre-stressing I-girder, pre-stressing box section beyond 30. So we can design the beams up to 30 meters, beyond 30 meters also. So 12 meters is the limit for reinforced cement concrete rectangular beam. Please remember this. And beyond that, go for post-tensioning. Otherwise, it's not economic.
Thank you, sir. We'll take this last question, sir, because many questions are popping up. This question is from Mahesh. Yes, sir.
We can take the question, tell them
yes,
we'll answer after through message or posting in Facebook or YouTube. We'll answer.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. So this last question I will take. Mahesh Kumar CL, the question is, sir, how to compare natural frequency values which we get from ETAP software with theoretical frequency for chimney structure?
Actually, theoretical frequency is not realistic, but it is conservative many times. Normally, whatever we calculate, sometimes it may not be realistic also. So it's always better to take natural frequency that we get from the ETAPs and calculate the forces based on ETAPs.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So, is there anyone who want to directly talk and ask your questions? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I am giving my number and email ID because it's already
Yes.
1.5 hours. In fact, I forgot to get even a glass of water. So
Yes.
I want to take a break now, and I have another meeting after
Okay,
half
sir.
an hour or 1 hour. So
Okay,
let
sir.
us
Okay,
close
sir.
it
Okay,
now.
sir.
I
Yes,
request
sir. Yes, sir.
participants to mail it or message to my number or even Facebook page I am giving here. You can also write in Messenger in my Facebook page, Smart Impress, and I'll answer definitely. I'll never leave any question unanswered. If I don't answer, I am doing injustice to what I talk. So please ask your questions. I'll answer. I'll need some time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Patagundi, sir. Patagundi, sir. Patagundi, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Please, you can give a concluding remark, sir. Hello, sir. Your voice is
Johnny
not.
Gara, please just ask.
Yes, sir.
Voice
Yes,
is
sir.
not clear. Hello.
It is clear.
Johnny Gara.
It is clear. Yes, sir. It is clear. Principal, sir.
Principal sir, Johnny Gara, ask him.
Hello, sir. Principal, sir.
Siddharama, sir.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening,
how are you,
sir.
sir? Prakash ji?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. I
Thank
was
you,
so
sir. So,
disappointed on the
back
Saturday, but
quickly.
today I'm very satisfied. It was very good.
This is what, but I'm very much thankful to you, sir. You have come so quickly because it was on
Yeah.
Saturday because you are too
Yeah.
busy. Because I was having one meeting. I am a
Oh.
chairman of the II Local Center Belagavi. So that
Okay.
Kolkata people have called a meeting at 4:30 today. I joined there.
Okay,
So
okay.
that's why I have joined your, the lecture a little late.
No problem,
of
sir.
course, it was at the end stage.
Yeah.
Sir, it was, I think there is no question of this one. So you are a very senior structural consultant and also doing a lot of other activities within, especially the civil engineering field. Good exposure. So definitely, in fact, I requested once to have someone MOU with our students to train our students because you are doing a lot of training works and all. So I have been interacting. So definitely this time. So in fact, I told already to our department HOD Professor Patagundi to talk, or he will be in touch with you so that your knowledge will going to help us to the budding engineers especially because most of the people what I am seeing it now, so they are just going with respect to some STAD Pro, ETAPS or this, that knowledge is required, absolutely no doubt about it, but the problem is they are not understanding, so they are not what is the output, how they are, whether they are correct or not, and whether is it practical or not. So this is missing a lot. So that is how, so they are feeling that one, so I can design G+10, G+20 like that through the ETAPS or STAD Pro or SAP, whatever it may be, but that is totally misunderstanding what I feel as a structural engineer. So like your expertise, like our experienced people are sharing, I think our civil engineering students will definitely going to have a lot of confidence in their design. So therefore, such type of things we're going to request you even after the post COVID-19 also, because at SCBIT we wanted to make it this as a norm. So every 15 days or a month we wanted to make it on webinar only. So wherein that one, so the more responses will be there, and also we can come in contact with the many engineers or the students or the stalwarts so that we can get more knowledge. This is what is our idea, sir. So therefore, you please give your time even in future too. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your nice presentation.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you all for joining me, and I enjoyed this interaction and very good questions I have got. Very good questions actually. It is not what we talk. Definitely, it is the questions from the participant that from which we understand what level of participants we got. Thank you very much for interacting very actively, and I hope to meet you again. And thank to Principal Siddharamapalli for giving again opportunity. And thanks to all the faculty and your colleagues in institute and students for participating actively. So Bye. Have a good day and a
Thank you,
good night.
sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir,
Bye.
Paduvandi sir, you want to say something? Paduvandi sir. Hello. Paduvandi sir.
Okay, it is all right. It is all right.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes,
Okay,
thank you,
bye,
sir.
Surya Prakash is our man. Absolutely no worry.
Yeah,
He will always be with us.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Thank you.
no worry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir.
That's
Thank you,
fine.
sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Prakash sir, thank you so much for the presentation.
Okay.
It was a very good
Yeah.
presentation.
Thank you.
Your
Thank you.
slides
Bye.
have some. We can understand everything from your slides only, and we learned many new, and we
Thank
learned
you.
many new things. And I just wanted to know if you would have been shared the Excel sheets. It would have been great for us.
I will share definitely. I'll share it to Deepak Ji. So he will
Yes, sir.
write, or you can send me a message. I'll share it. No problem.
Even as a faculty, we understood many new things from you, sir. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank
the
you.
presentation.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Bye, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir. We'll end the meeting now, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
You can tell the thanks to other
Okay, sir.
participants also.
Okay. Yes. I thank each and every participant for attending this webinar. It was a nice discussion, and the speaker was very good, and we understand many insights. So I already shared one feedback link. You can go through that, and please give your valuable feedback so that we can still improve the further webinars. And we will be having 2 more webinars upcoming in on May 16th and May 23rd. So I'll be sending the registration links to those webinars to the these participants and the registered who were also registered. So thank you everyone. Thank you very much.
And the one more I have made it already on the June 5th. Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
June 5th. So that is the World Environment Day.
Okay.
Understood? So it's actually that World Water Day we have missed Dr. Lokesh from JC Mysore. So now on Sunday I spoke to him. He has agreed to deliver on this particularly that June 5th. So therefore there will be one more webinar on June 5th connected to the Environmental Day. So this also you can just an announcement. So the upcoming seminars or the webinars, you just make the list and put it in the website.
Okay, sir. Right.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
Yeah, do it like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you all the participants once again.